What's up? It's your boy Carcino here. Let's get to the truth behind the Beach Street and Breakin beef. Oh, this is when the East Coast, West Coast beef really started. It kicked off in the 80s. Had nothing to do with rhymes, had nothing to do with rap. It had something to do with breakdancing. Now, the breakdance scene was hot back then. If you had George Benson's Give Me the Night, that was it. Just give me the night. You had Medtronics and everything else, Shaka Khan and Rufus. Any of those type of songs like disco pop music, that was the trend then. All the crazy type of clothes that was rebellious to what everybody else was wearing to be seen. It was the era and culture where you were from. And from West Coast to East Coast, everybody is saying that each side stole from the other. And that's what made it weird, because it was like, oh, they stole from us, that's ours. And the other person is like, yo, they stole that from us. So everybody is, it's crazy, because years later that ended up being the thing. Like, oh, they trying to bite our style. They trying to bite our style. East and West Coast. When the West Coast breakdancers were a lot different than most of the East Coast breakdancers. They were more into the pop locking, to where the East Coast breakdancing was a more aggressive, hard style. And then they were more into the spins and everything else, like actually breaking down to the floor and spinning. And East Coast is doing that a lot more. Doing more flips, more acrobatic. You know, West Coast hip hop, the Latinos, they had it to a certain degree to where they were like some of the like Pop and Lock and all those guys from Breakin. Man, we were blessed to have this feud happen, because the feud happened. All the dancers off the streets, it was no plot, because Orion Pictures, who had Beach Street, they were the ones that had the idea pitched, and they were going to run with it. But first, the script, like the idea of doing this energy dance, was brought to Cannon's people first. So the Cannon people was like, we got to get on top of this. So they brought the guy that's like the head of Cannon, was crazy, who was a director too. He was all about breaking. This is what it's going to, man, this movie's going to be huge, I'm telling you. But he's like that with all his films. And Cannon was known for making some of the craziest films. If you grew up on movies in the 90s, you grew up on Cannon films. Van Damme, Chuck Norris, Cannon. That's all you remember. They made some of the craziest movies known to mankind. They will find a way to throw some nudity in there. If you remember anything with Charles Bronson, they would find any way to make a movie and make it work. That was their whole thing. It's like, we're going to just make it work. Get some tape, take that down, make sure she's naked. There we go. Let's roll. I mean, they would have people naked in scenes that didn't even need to be. But it was completely funny to see how Cannon made these movies. They just kept throwing them out. Like, look, here we go. Van Damme Cyborg, throw it out. And most of these are like classics to us. But to Hollywood, people just like, it's some more Cannon garbage. But Breakin was one of the movies that broke the mold, because it didn't have all that stuff. It actually had a plot. Beach Street was a good movie. And the actual dance scenes and everything else, you know, and Rainbow and Beach Street and everything else, you was calling the characters because you related to them because they looked like you. You're like, man, that looked like my homie. You knew most of these characters. You knew the places. So when you saw the places that you visit, if you're on the East Coast, you see the subway battles, and that stuff was hot. So you relate to it more. Same thing with Breakin'. And when they was making the film, it kind of got rushed. And that's where it kind of divvied out, because you see more rap in Beat Street than you do in Breakin'. But in Beat Street, when they found out the movie that Breakin' was coming out, and they making another movie that's supposed to be going up against them, that Cannon was going to still do the movie, but since Orion was doing theirs, and they were like, we was going to start ours first. Now they want to do it. We got to rush our movie out. Come on, guys. So the release date, they had to wait till like a month later before they could come back and do anything to release another album. I mean, not an album, but another movie. You know how you going out somewhere, fellas, and the girl you seeing or whatever, your girl be like, you got no plans. You got no plans with her. You got nothing to do. You got plans that you made on your own to go do something. Now all of a sudden she want to conversate. Now all of a sudden she wants to be involved. Knowing you got to go somewhere, she don't mind you going nowhere and this and that. She want to conversate. She want to have some type of discussion about something. Oh, go ahead and do what you got to do, but let's do it. See? You see? Now I got to respond to that. Or it's why you didn't respond to this. But I'm not going to respond to that. Y'all come first. So we going to stick up here and continue this video. And she just got to wait. Now, going into this movie, they were 30 days behind. So they're getting bumped up from the 30 days, and they trying to rush and get everything done in one take. And Breakin' is doing the same thing, because the script changed like 45,000 times. There was no script at first. There was no script. The script that they had originally for Breakin' was that they were trying to, the street rappers, this girl, Lasinia Dickey, who's a professional dancer, they was like, okay, well, you're a professional dancer, we're going to make you the star. We gonna have you go ahead with these break dancers, and then you're gonna learn some moves so you could go. The whole thing was about her. They were gonna make her the star. She was gonna get she was gonna learn from these street dancers how to break dance, and she's gonna use that in audition to get an audition to make it to the show. And Turbo and Ozone, they were gonna be just the outcasts of the film. They were the ones that just gonna help her. They were the Mickeys of the whole situation. They were just gonna help her out. But they resented her being in the film Breakin' because she knew nothing about breaking. So that led to the script being changed to saying, oh, well, that's the movie. That's the movie. They're gonna resent her, and then she's gonna learn breaking. But that's what it was. As they were filming the movie, it started off that way. That's why the movie, if you watch it, you see the movie of her going to auditions. They had no dreams of going to no audition to be anything. It was all about her. And then when she runs into them and they having the resentment about her training and all this and this was going on the set. And they just like, man, we need to make that the story. They gonna resent her. She shouldn't be here. Then they end up teaching her anyway. And some way they're gonna end up having to do it. So we'll right around that, make them do it, have them do breakdancing scenes and just record it. All that stuff was freestyled. They just wrote as they went. And it ended up being a great story because it was real. She knew nothing about breaking. She learned a little bit of something. She still wasn't that good. She helped them win some battle, and next thing you know, she convinces them to go and audition for this thing that she wanted to get. But now she takes Turbo the Ozone with her. Beat Street was entirely different. It was about battling, streets, breaking, and it was no commercial. It was rugged. It was East Coast. Everything about Beat Street was East Coast. If you was about the East Coast, Beach Street is the one you look to. Breakin was like, that's some comedy commercial type stuff. I don't want nothing to do with that. This girl trying to be a breakdance, she can't even break that. So people were like shunning the movie from the East Coast. Like, screw that garbage. But Hollywood loved it. You had a white girl as the lead. Beach Street, oh, it's just a bunch of thugs. So they gravitated more to Breakin. Breakin made $50-some million box office. Smash. It only took them like, what, $2 million to make? This movie took home a $50+ million. It was a monstrous hit, and he knew it. I knew it. That's why they went right into part 2. We're going to get bigger sets, bigger stuff, and that went all the way downhill. But this is what caused a whole friction between two coasts, because all the people knew on the East Coast about the West Coast. They hated them and never even been there. They had never been to the West Coast. They didn't really know nobody from the West Coast. They see Breakin and they relate that to the West Coast. That's just it. That was their first introduction really into the West Coast, was Breakin. And they looking like, that's what they do on the West Coast. They lay on a beach and spit on a cardboard all day. Yeah, them dudes are soft. They soft, son. So, on the East Coast, they look at them and they just like, oh my gosh, those guys, they always wear boots, even in the summer. My gosh, look at them. They're wearing boots and chains. How you gonna move around? Oh man, so it was the stereotypical way of people looking at each other, and that's carried all the way on into the 90s and everything else. But people who had never been to these places had this certain cultural bias towards the other side. It was just retarded. But that was the truth in the battle between the two movies. They even came out at the box office at the same time. They had people outside breakdancing in front of the theaters. They had a movie release date with Orion Pictures and forgot. It was two other movies that came out that was breakdancing movies too. I can't remember their names. I think one of them was like Pop Rock or something, or Rock Bottom or something like that. They were really low budget breaking movies. And I think they were at the Cannes Film Festival too. So that's all I got on this. But I just wanted to introduce y'all to something other than. And I'm out.